Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shinyavadi Ashkatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shundari Vastatya Deshatarine
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna
Ki Jai Gaura Premanandi. Whew. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay. Krishna, welcome. Rudna Lochana Prabhu, Haribol. Thank you for tuning in. Hare Krishna. Hope you are faring well, considering the circumstances. Hare Krishna. I don't know if I announced it. We have Bhakti Josh, we have Kalaji, we have Bhava Saroraham Prabhu, we have Bhakti Cassidy, and Aruna Lochana Prabhu. Just so everybody's greeted. Yeah, sorry for the time change. Nrsimha Chaturdasi here in New Vrindavan, so Abhishek is at 5 and didn't want to miss that. So, adjusted. We are starting in Canto 1, Chapter 17, Text 31, 117:31. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantasto Yabhadrani Vidhunoti Suhritsatam Nashta Prayeshva Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. Alright, Prabhuji's. Waste no time. Dive in here. Basically, Mars Parikshit, he came up on a Shudra who was dressed as a king, who was beating this cow and this bull, trying to kill him. So he, approached and confirmed the identity of the cow and the bull, who are actually the personality of religion and the personality of the earth, and understood that the person was the personality of Kali, and he was about to kill him. But Kali surrendered, and because Maharaj Parikshit is a virtuous and qualified Kshatriya, they cannot kill someone who is surrendering to them. So, basically at this point is as soon as Maharaj Parikshit begins to speak to the personality of Kali. Rajovacha Nate Gura Kesha Yashodharanam Varhanjaler Vaibhayamasti Kinchit Navartitavyam Bhavata Katanchana Kshetre Mariye Tvamadharma Bandhu. The king thus said, "We have inherited the fame of Arjuna, therefore since you have surrendered yourself with folded hands, you need not fear for your life. But you cannot remain in my kingdom, for you are the friend of irreligion." Excuse me. Purport. The personality of Kali, who is the friend of all kinds of irreligiosities, may be excused if he surrenders, but in all circumstances he cannot be allowed to live as a citizen in any part of a welfare state. The Pandavas were entrusted representatives of the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, who practically brought into being the battle of Kurukshetra, but not for any personal interest. He wanted an ideal king like Maharaj Yudhisthira and his descendants like Maharaj Parikshit to rule the world, and therefore a responsible king like Maharaj Parikshit could not allow the friend of irreligiosity to flourish in his kingdom at the cost of the good fame of the Pandavas. That is the way of wiping out corruption in the state and not otherwise. The friends of irreligiosity should be banished from the state, and that will save the state from corruption. Tam vartamanam naradeva deheshvanu pravritto yamadharma pugaha labonraktam charyamanaryamam ho jishtacha maya kalahascha dambaha. If the personality of Kali, irreligion, is allowed to act as a man-god or an executive head, certainly irreligious principles like greed, falsehood, robbery, incivility, treachery, misfortune, cheating, quarrel, and vanity will abound. Purport. The principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, as we have already discussed, may be followed by the follower of any faith. There is no need to turn from Hindu to Mohammedan to Christian or some other faith and thus become a renegade and not follow the principles of religion. The Bhagavatam religion urges following the principles of religion. The principles of religion are not the dogmas or regulative principles of a certain faith. Such regulative principles may be different in terms of the time and place concerned. One has to see whether the aims of religion have been achieved. Sticking to the dogmas and formulas without attaining the real principle is not good. A secular state may be impartial to any particular type of faith, but the state cannot be indifferent to the principles of religion as above mentioned. But in the age of Kali, the executive heads of state will be indifferent to such religious principles. And therefore, under their patronage, the opponents of religious principles, such as greed, falsehood, cheating, and pilfery, will naturally follow. And so there will be no meaning to propaganda crying to stop corruption in the state. Nivartitavyam tadadharma bandho dharmena satyena cha vartitavye brahmavartye chatra yajanti yagyar yagishvaram yagyavitana vigyaha. Therefore, O friend of irreligion, you do not deserve to remain in a place where experts perform sacrifices according to truth and religious principles for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Yageshvara, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the beneficiary of all kinds of sacrificial ceremonies. Such sacrificial ceremonies are prescribed differently in the scriptures for different ages. In other words, sacrifice means to accept the supremacy of the Lord and thereby perform acts by which the Lord may be satisfied in all respects. The atheists do not believe in the existence of God, and they do not perform any sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord. Any place or country where the supremacy of the Lord is accepted and thus sacrifice is performed is called Brahmavarta. There are different countries in different parts of the world, and each and every country may have different types of sacrifice to please the Supreme Lord, but the central point in pleasing Him is ascertained in the Bhagavatam, and it is truthfulness. The basic principle of religion is truthfulness, and the ultimate goal of all religions is to satisfy the Lord. In this age of Kali, the greatest common formula of sacrifice is the Sankirtan Yajna. That is the opinion of the experts who know how to propagate the process of yajna. Lord Chaitanya preached this method of yajna, and it is understood from this verse that the sacrificial method of Sankirtan Yajna may be performed anywhere and everywhere in order to drive away the personality of Kali and save human society from falling prey to the influence of the age. Yasmin Harir Bhagavan Ijyamana Ijatma Murtir Yajatam Santanoti Kamana Moghan Stira Jangamanam Antarbahirvayara Vaishya Atma. In all sacrificial ceremonies, although sometimes a demigod is worshipped, the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is worshipped because He is the super soul of everyone and exists both inside and outside like the air. Thus it is He only who awards all welfare to the worshipper. Purport. It is even sometimes seen that demigods like Indra and Chandra are worshipped and offered sacrificial awards. Yet the rewards of all such sacrifices are awarded to the worshipper by the Supreme Lord, and it is the Lord only who can offer all welfare to the worshipper. The demigods, although worshipped, cannot do anything without the sanction of the Lord, because the Lord is the supersoul of everyone, both moving and non-moving. In Bhagavad Gita 9.23, the Lord himself confirms this in the following shloka. Yepyanya devata bhakta yajante sharayan vitaha tepimam eva kamteya yajantya vidhi purvakam. Whatever a man may sacrifice to other gods, O son of Kunti, is really meant for me alone, but it is offered without true understanding. The fact is that the Supreme Lord is one without a second, and there is no God other than the Lord himself. Thus the Supreme Lord is eternally transcendental to the material creation. But there are many who worship the demigods like the sun, the moon, and Indra, who are only material representatives of the Supreme Lord. These demigods are indirect, qualitative representations of the Supreme Lord. A learned scholar or devotee, however, knows who is who. Therefore he directly worships the Supreme Lord and is not diverted by the material qualitative representations. Those who are not so learned worship such qualitative material representations, but their worship is unceremonious because it is irregular. Suto vacha parikshitaiva madishta sakalirjata vepatu tamudyata simhahedam dandapanim avodyatam. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the personality of Kali, thus being ordered by Maharaj Parikshit, began to tremble in fear. Seeing the king before him like Yamaraj ready to kill him, Kali spoke to the king as follows. Purport. The king was ready to kill the personality of Kali at once, as soon as he disobeyed his order. Otherwise, the king had no objection to allowing him to prolong his life. The personality of Kali also, after attempting to get rid of the punishment in various ways, decided that he must surrender unto him, and thus he began to tremble in fear of his life. The king, or the executive head, must be so strong as to stand before the personality of Kali like the personality of death, Yamaraj. The king's order must be obeyed, otherwise the culprit's life is in risk. That is the way to rule the personalities of Kali who create disturbance in the normal life of the state citizens. Kalir vacha yatra kvavata vachyami sarvabhauma tavagnaya lakshaye tatra tatrapi tvam ateshu sharashanam. O your majesty, though I may live anywhere and everywhere under your order, I shall but see you with bow and arrows wherever I look. Purport. The personality of Kali could see that Maharaj Parikshit was the emperor of all lands all over the world, and thus anywhere he might live he would have to meet with the same mood of the king. The personality of Kali was meant for mischief, and Maharaj Parikshit was meant for subduing all kinds of mischief mongers, especially the personality of Kali. It was better, therefore, for the personality of Kali to have been killed by the king then and there instead of being killed elsewhere. He was, after all, a surrendered soul before the king, and it was for the king to do what was required. Tanme dharma bratam shreshta stanam nirdeshti marhasi yataiva niyato vatsya atishthangste nushasanam. Therefore, O chief amongst the protectors of religion, please fix some place for me where I can live permanently under the protection of your government. Purport. The personality of Kali addressed Maharaj Parikshit as the chief amongst the protectors of religiosity because the king refrained from killing a person who surrendered unto him. A surrendered soul should be given all protection, even though he may be an enemy. That is the principle of religion, and we can just imagine what sort of protection is given by the personality of Godhead to the person who surrenders unto him, not as an enemy, but as a devoted servitor. The Lord protects the surrendered soul from all sins and all resultant reactions of sinful acts. Bhagavad Gita 1866. Just think of Sudama Brahmana. You know? He was very poor. His wife was like, come on, man. Like, we don't have anything to eat. You gotta, like, do something. You know, you went to school with Krishna. You know, go ask Krishna. We'll give you something. He was like, I don't want to. But she basically, like, nagged him until he did. Well, you know, kind of. And actually, he didn't even have anything to offer. He wanted to go and see Krishna, but he wanted to offer him something. And he went and like begged from some neighbors, and they gave him like I believe it was uncooked rice. You know, like a palmful of it, and he put it in his like, you know, handkerchief and put it on the stick. Not literally, but anyway, he walked and went and saw Krishna, and Krishna was so happy to see him, long lost friend. And then he gave him, like, I think Krishna started eating it like immediately. Like, oh, this is for me. Krishna was so hyped and like grateful for the gift. Like, oh, you were thinking of me and you gave this for me, and just like, you know, like eating it. And I think he sat him down right on his bed, and I think Sudama Brahmana was like, you know, maybe a little bit like dirty, and his cloth was torn, and he was so poor, and he was like feeling embarrassed, like, you know, like so humble. And actually, and I think the Lord even bathed his feet and everything. And actually, he didn't even ask him for anything. He couldn't bring himself to even ask. And then when he left, you know, basically when he got home, there was like a huge palatial palace and everything in the place of where his, you know, little hermitage was and stuff. Yeah. Okay.
What verse are they on?
38. Since we're talking, I'll just share. I really like the beginning part that we were reading today. Prabhupada, it's really showing Prabhupada's like universal perspective. You know, he separated religions from the principles of religion. You know, basically, and he was talking about the state. You know, basically, the state may be impartial to so many different types of religion, but never should the state be partial to the principles of religion. And you know, he's establishing like these higher principles as opposed to whatever religion you are. Which I don't know any other religion. I guess we're a religion that teaches that. You know,
Yeah.
every religion is teaching in terms of their own religion.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a really special feature. You know, some devotees, some new people, some devotees may not see that because there's so much to learn. There's such a vast body of knowledge. You know, one thing I think is the thing I'm observing most about new people becoming devotees or trying to is just taking the time to actually hear and understand Prabhupada's mood about different things. They'll hear just a little tiny bit, and then they'll get like some impression, and then just think, oh yeah, it's like this or like that or something like that, you know. And it's like, well, not actually. Like they're like totally missing Prabhupada's mood. You know, take a thing meant for a particular context and think, oh, you know, they just are like this or like that or something. I see it so much. Even practicing devotees do this a lot. And they don't like read. And then they, you know, their faith becomes kind of affected because, you know, they like are seeing faults based on whatever, like this amount they heard. Anyway. Text 38. Sutta vacha abhyartitastada tasmai stanani kalaye dado dutam bhanam striyasuna yatra dharmas chaturvidaha. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, thus being petitioned by the personality of Kali, gave him permission to reside in places where gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter were performed. Purport. The basic principles of irreligiosity, such as pride, prostitution, intoxication, and falsehood, counteract the four principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The personality of Kali was given permission to live in four places particularly mentioned by the king, namely the place of gambling, the place of prostitution, the place of drinking, and the place of animal slaughter. Srila Jiva Goswami directs that drinking against the principles of scriptures, such as the Shautramani Yagya, association with women outside marriage, and killing animals against the injunction of scriptures are irreligious. In the Vedas, two different types of injunctions are there for the pravritas, or those who are engaged in material enjoyment, and for the nivritas, or those who are liberated from material bondage. The Vedic injunction for the pravritas is to gradually regulate their activities towards the path of liberation. Therefore, for those who are in the lowest stage of ignorance and who indulge in wine, women, and flesh, drinking by performing Shautramani Yagya, association of women by marriage, and flesh eating by sacrifices are sometimes recommended. Such recommendations in the Vedic literature are meant for a particular class of men and not for all. But because they are injunctions of the Vedas for particular types of persons, such activities by the pravritas are not considered adharma. One man's food may be poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu therefore affirms that recommendations in the scriptures for a certain class of men are never to be considered adharma, or irreligious. But such activities are factually adharma, and they are never to be encouraged. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for the encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually toward the path of dharma. Following in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit, it is the duty of all executive heads of states to see that the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, are established in the state, and that the principles of irreligion, namely pride, illicit female association or prostitution, intoxication, and falsity, are checked by all means. And to make the best use of a bad bargain, the personality of Kali may be transferred to places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and slaughterhouses, if there are any places like that. Those who are addicted to these irreligious habits may be regulated by the injunctions of the scripture. In no circumstances should they be encouraged by any state. In other words, the state should categorically stop all sorts of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. The state which wants to eradicate corruption by majority may introduce the principles of religion in the following manner. 1. 2 compulsory fasting days in a month, if not more. Austerity. Even from the economic point of view, such 2 fasting days in a month in the state will save tons of food, and the system will also act very favorably on the general health of the citizens. 2. There must be compulsory marriage of young boys and girls attaining 24 years of age and 16 years of age, respectively. There is no harm in coeducation in the schools and colleges, provided the boys and girls are duly married. And in case there is any intimate connection between a male and female student, they should be married properly without illicit relation. The Divorce Act is encouraging prostitution, and this should be abolished. Can you imagine if everybody in college was married? 3. The citizens of the state must give in charity up to 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state or in human society, both individually and collectively. They should preach the principles of Bhagavatam by A. Karma Yoga, or doing everything for the satisfaction of the Lord. B. Regular hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam from authorized persons or realized souls. C. Chanting of the glories of the Lord congregationally at home or at places of worship. D. Rendering all kinds of service to the Bhagavats engaged in preaching Srimad Bhagavatam. And E. Residing in a place where the atmosphere is saturated with God consciousness. If the state is regulated by the above process, naturally there will be God consciousness everywhere. Gambling of all description, even speculative business enterprise, is considered to be degrading, and when gambling is encouraged in the state, there is a complete disappearance of truthfulness. Allowing young boys and girls to remain unmarried more than the above-mentioned ages and licensing animal slaughterhouses of all description should be at once prohibited. The flesh eaters may be allowed to take flesh, as mentioned in the scriptures, and not otherwise. Intoxication of all description, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or the drinking of tea must be prohibited. End of purport. Punaschaya chamanaya jatarupam madat prabhu tato nritam madam kamam rajo vairam cha panchamam. I just want to make a comment. Like that end of that purport we just read, this is an example of like something I would see. Like somebody would read that purport, and at the end, they'll just read that last part. What the intoxication, even smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, drinking tea must be prohibited. This is like, what the heck does this have to do with God consciousness? This is like too much, blah blah blah. But you're not remembering the part earlier in the purport where Prabhupada was talking about one man's food may be a poison for others. Similarly, what is recommended for those in the mode of ignorance may be poison for those in the mode of goodness. The recommendations in the scriptures are not meant for encouragement of such adharma, but for regulating the necessary adharma gradually toward the path of dharma. So, like, they'll read that whole thing and then hear that last part and totally forget the whole first half of the purport that's talking about, well, there is allowances according to the individual. The state itself should be structured like this, and the individuals can apply like this. And they get all up in arms and, all disturbed.
Think that they can't practice?
Yeah, or like thinking it's like too restrictive or like they have to artificially restrict to practice, which is not what Prabhupada is saying. It's just so important, And probably, maybe, back in the day more, I think it's kind of like fizzling out now, this like fanatical application and this fanatical mood in ISKCON. I think there's like, as time passes, younger devotees tend to be less fanatical, and, over time, I think the mood is like, the general mood is like shifted and is going a particular direction, and by need, like it needs to, because people of Kali Yuga, as time is progressing, they're less and less able to respond to like, hard rules and regulations mood, or enforcing all these things.
Austerity.
Yeah, the austerities, less and less able. So we're kind of being forced to like mature as a group in some ways. I think. Anyway, anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, what's more important, having a small group of people following it strictly, or a big congregation where everyone's chanting Hare Krishna, but everyone's working to where they're at, like letting people have some coffee in the morning. It's like in the Welcome Center, there's coffee there. It's not like we show it, but if somebody's like, I need coffee, we give it to them, because how else are they going to go to the temple and like feel peaceful if they don't have a headache all day, So like, and there's signs that says, no, this, and if you have to smoke, go behind the dumpster, don't do it in public. Anyway, definitely, you're right. It's important to just get people to chant Hare Krishna and take prashad.
Yeah, I think the real thing is, like Prabhupada, as far as I read and understand, since ISKCON basically started in New York, I read this in, the house, Prabhupada built a house the whole world could live in. And, there are always like two types of devotees. The ones that like move in and put on devotional clothing and, whatever, do all the rules, regulations, shave up, blah, blah, blah. And then there's like the other ones that, wanted to keep the long hair and stay dressing, but whatever. And, but they like to preach, and they're devotees. So like Prabhupada was so expert, he created an atmosphere in which both of them felt loved and welcome and happy. And I think nowadays, in general, different temples may have different moods. Devotees sometimes may be in a kind of one nature or the other, and therefore sometimes, like some temples, like wow, kind of feel like you fit right in, and other temples like, yeah, this mood's a little different. Not that it's wrong or bad, but just like. And then sometimes we do see also like really advanced devotees, they are able to make that atmosphere where it kind of transcendental, like it was like that in Denver. You know, we had the experience of so many different nature devotees actually somehow working together. It was something special. Yeah. So, like, to be able to facilitate, those who want to follow real strictly, like brahmacharis, those who are actually, the few that actually want to do that, you should be able to take care of them, facilitate them. At the same time, and not to be like the mood is like so rigid that people can't just come and feel relaxed and worshiping the Lord. Not like someone's like jumping down their throat because they whatever. Whatever. Turn my back to the deity for 2 seconds. I remember when I first came, I was serving up prasadam and I was doing it with my left hand, and man, I got ripped into like anything. And then I put down my right hand, and then I was serving, and then I dumped it this way instead of this way. And then somebody ripped into me for that. It's like, man, this is like, man, I can't do anything right.
Purva Prabhu, I think I told this story once already. When I first came to the temple ever, I had long hair. I went into the prasadam cooler and I started eating grapes. Because I was completely new, I had no idea. All the boga for the Lord was in there. Purva opens the door, he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to eat something." And he's like, "Okay, you can take it." He's like, "Just take it with you." And I was like, "Okay, sorry." Alright, now come with me. And he started raising me in service. And he was so kind he gave me an intense, chastisement, but then he was so sweet afterwards. Because at the same time, we don't want to let people just, come in, half naked to the temple or, smell in. And, you gotta have some, touching the Lord's boga, you gotta have some stricture. But to be able to, give an environment of, love and acceptance, despite those, inadequacies. That was important for me.
Yeah, and a sensitivity to who you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in the walk-in and Jai Krishna Prabhu's in there, eating the boga, it might be a different reaction than, someone who just came yesterday.
Right. Right.
Probably, what are you doing? Whatever.
I mean, you can imagine a Purva, how upset he probably was, but his reaction didn't match. It was intense, but it wasn't nearly can you imagine someone who cooks for the Lord so lovingly to see someone just eat
and intensely.
Yeah,
he was intense in the kitchen.
But I've seen him. One more story about a Purva Prabhu. I was cutting vegetables one time and I was doing it wrong. He's like, "No, you got to do it like this. This is for the Lord. Make it nice." I was like, "I can't do it," and I got all frustrated, and I was so really new. He's like, "No, here, I'll show you." And he gently just went from here to here in an instant. And I think I read somewhere that that's a sign of transcendental anger, when somebody's able to show it and then pull it back right away to reel it in, without any reaction.
Yeah, I was in the kitchen with him in Denver. I think we were cooking it was a big one, maybe a Sunday feast or maybe a festival. I can't remember, and he was full intensity that day. And he was going "No!" He's yelling.
Yeah.
And I'm real sensitive to that. And I never said anything. He never really yelled at me. And I was cutting. And he came over and he was yeah. And he was really gentle with me. And then he went to the next guy and was yelling at him. So I was yeah, Krishna, he understood what I needed and responded accordingly. It was funny. Yell. Yeah. I was and then yell at him.
Yeah.
It was
and then once he yelled at Jivan and Nanda, they became the best cooks, right?
Yeah, they did.
He was able to pull them up to his level.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, all of this, that we're talking about, being strict, being, lenient, it's, the main thing that is important is, constantly associating with the devotees. Through it all. That's, what we want to keep, so that they can keep learning, people can keep learning, and just, keep hearing about Krishna at the same time, and just stay in touch.
Right. Not to become overly discouraged, which is easy to do.
Yeah.
Because also it's Krishna, we get pushed a little bit, not to stay where we're at,
right.
Make some advancement. But if we just stick around, Krishna will reciprocate to take the edge off,
He always does.
Like, okay, here, Prabhuji, here's a rasagula. Say, oh, all right. Whatever it may be. Yeah. Well, at least here one more or so. Text 40. Unless anybody wants to still say anything.
Did you finish 39? I think you just read the Sanskrit.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll read start the translation of 39. The personality of Kali asked for something more, and because of his begging, the king gave him permission to live where there is gold, because wherever there is gold, there is also falsity, intoxication, lust, envy, and enmity. Report. Although Maharaj Parikshit gave Kali permission to live in 4 places, it was very difficult for him to find the places, because during the reign of Maharaj Parikshit, there were no such places. Therefore, Kali asked the king to give him something practical which could be utilized for his nefarious purposes. Maharaj Parikshit thus gave him permission to live in a place where there is gold, because wherever there is gold, there are all the above mentioned 4 things, and over and above them there is enmity also. So the personality of Kali became gold standardized. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, gold encourages falsity, intoxication, prostitution, envy, and enmity. Even a gold standard exchange and currency is bad. Gold standard currency is based on falsehood because the currency is not on a par with the reserved gold. The basic principle is falsity because currency notes are issued in value beyond that of the actual reserved gold. This artificial inflation of currency by the authorities encourages prostitution of the state economy. The price of commodities becomes artificially inflated because of bad money or artificial currency notes. Bad money drives away good money instead of paper currency. Bad money drives away good money. Instead of paper currency, actual gold coins should be used for exchange, and this will stop prostitution of gold. Gold ornaments for women may be allowed by control, not by quality but by quantity. This will discourage lust, envy, and enmity. When there is actual gold currency in the form of coins, the influence of gold in producing falsity, prostitution, and so on will automatically cease. There will be no need of an anti-corruption ministry for another term of prostitution and falsity of purpose.
Wow.
Hare Krishna. The energies are cranking up around here. Hare Krishna. Just stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
And Abhishek's in about 5 minutes or so. So I'll end the reading part there, but we can still have a little discussion if we want. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go to Premanandi. Any other points anybody wants to bring up?
Well, I can definitely see the enmity resulting in New Vrindavan from having a lot of gold or money, seeing all the clashing and
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
unfortunate. But it's at the same time, Prabhupada, that last point he made was really interesting, that if we switch to gold standardized currency, those things can really become less intense, which I thought was really interesting. I'm not sure how that would work, but I don't know. It'd be nice if we could work towards that.
Well, he was saying that even a currency that's backed by gold, or an economic system like ours used to be, and then whatever year that was, 1933 or whatever, they switched it when the Federal Reserve. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, I don't remember. I'm confusing different things right now, but he said that usually the notes are worth more than the actual reserve gold. So basically, it's all based on falsity, and that's also Gully's influence and infiltration. So by keeping it genuine,
Right.
Yeah, like
that
that.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the 4 regular principles. Whenever we don't follow those, Cully gets in there, and actually we read somewhat recently, like a week ago or whatever. Basically they're the cause of quarrel, the root cause of quarrel.
What, for breaking 4 eggs?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Cully means quarrel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, as devotees, if we can just get trained up at least to the point of like, okay, if I'm struggling with these things, the focus should be in regulating oneself, at least moving towards Dharma and the following of these things. And even if we can't yet, and that mentality will also protect us. As opposed to like what we tend to do is like if we struggle with something, usually there's a few different things that are going on at the same time. Like having feelings of shame or this and that, and then we tend and then end up getting in, what do they call it, like snafus with people, or sometimes we just straight up try to point out other people's faults or criticize just to take the attention off me because I know secretly I don't follow that kind of like subtle stuff in the mind, and quarrel begins. We find fault in people who actually may not even be doing anything wrong necessarily. So like even if we can't follow, so like just being sincere, it's like okay, like let me see what I can do and try to like humbly take shelter of devotees that can help me move towards actually doing it, and just be humble. Oh, there's pride. That was one of the main ones. Vanity, or all specific things that were mentioned where Kali is found.
Yeah, that was interesting. He linked pride and austerity, right? In one of the first purports we read. I don't know if he linked them, but he wrote them sequentially as pride, and then austerity was the one that like matched up with it. So I thought that was interesting. Like when people are proud, they tend to not do, strict sadhana, austerity, and then it leads to falsity, or all those other things.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's when we like start like chastising hardcore anybody, like just looking at what everyone's doing wrong and like being all disturbed about it. Like I do this, it's like what are these? What are they doing? Like like just getting all. Yeah.
Once again, it seems that reading Prabhupada's books is another thing that just keeps giving in that regard, like fixing that in us, or keeping us humble, keeping us austere, keeping us focused. All those things.
Yeah.
Everything's in there.
Yeah, even Prabhupada said that. Remember, he said, citizens of the state must give in charity up to 50% of their income for the purpose of creating a spiritual atmosphere in the state of human society, both individually and collectively. They should preach the principles of Bhagavatam, do everything for the satisfaction of the Lord, regular hearing of the Bhagavatam from authorized persons, chanting the glories of the Lord congregationally, rendering all kinds of service to Bhagavats engaged in preaching Bhagavatam.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he says, like, this is the cure, right? For those who want to implement this is what you should do.
Yeah.
He says it explicitly.
Sweet. Well, I think we have to go chant the glories of the Lord congregationally now. And, Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much. All glories to Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki jai. Manchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll, tomorrow, regular time, Krishna willing, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. Alright, well, thank you guys for tuning in. Have a good night.